Hi everyone, very good morning and good evening. So we'll start the session. Let me share my screen. Okay, guys. So let's come to this. Okay. So previously, what we have done, we discussed about all the different options. So when we are implementing the validation part, right? Now today, so let's finish off this dynamic table creation. So once we finish this dynamic table creation, right? After that, we will go to the different table types in Snowflake. Now, here, generally what we are doing here, whenever we wanted to load the data to the table, first we are creating a table structure. We are creating table structure. Based on the table structure, we are loading the file to the stage area. Then we are loading the data to the table, right? But dynamically, I wanted to create a table based on the file. For example, if you see the stage name, this particular stage, so if you observe, let's see, the file is available. The file is available here. This is the file which it is available. Now, this particular file from this particular stage, so when I am trying to load this particular data into the table, I don't want to create a table structure first. During the runtime, when I run the copy command, automatically it has to load the data to the table. So for that process, what we are going to do is, when we are working with this, we have to use this creating a schema in inference. So this we will call it as infer schema. Let me give this. We used to call this as a infer schema option. What we are going to do is, when we are creating a file format, observe this one, we have to create this particular file format first. So this one, separate file format we are creating with infer schema option. Just created a infer schema. When you are doing this, parse header equal to true. The file is having a header, right? It has to consider the header also. That's the reason. So based on the header only, it is going to create a table. Whatever the file it is having, that file is having a header, right? Based on the header, it will create a table structure. That's why we have to give, when we are creating a file format, parse header equal to true. Okay, clear. Now let's come to the next step. Once you created this, already the file is available here. Based on that, we need to create this schema implementation. See this, creating a table with the schema using infer schema option. Infer schema option. This we will call it as a infer schema with table with schema using infer schema option. When you are creating a table, observe this one. What we are going to do is, see this, we are not giving any column names and data types here. See this, just we are giving, this is by using object construct option. This is the syntax what we are going to give. This is the object construct. This is the new, the implementation which has been introduced in Snowflake. Based on object construct option, what it is going to do is, it will construct the table structure based on the file what you are going to give it here. What is the stage name here? This is the stage name, right? List at the rate, this is the named stage, right? This particular stage name. So in this particular stage, we have this particular file. So what we are going to do is, from this particular stage, it has to pick the file. So here, this is the stage name I am using. This is the stage name. And then based on which file it has to pick, and then it has to load the, I mean, it has to create a table structure based on this particular file, right? I pick the file. See this, I change the file details. Now observe this one, with the help of create a table. See this, create or replace table by using template. This is the syntax. By using template, select array aggregate of object construct. What it is going to do is from table of infer schema, from this particular location, from this particular file, it is going to pick, and then it is going to pick the file format. When it is picking the file format, it is going to pick parse header equal to true, means based on that particular columns it will pick, and then it is going to create a, it is select array aggregate of object construct, right? What it will do is it is going to pick all the columns, it will create a table. The table we are creating as the table name as my table. We are creating it as a my table. Now observe this one. When you use this syntax, what will happen is you no need to create like all the columns one by one. You no need to specify columns and data types. Automatically based on the file, whatever the file you are going to have in this particular stage area, in this particular stage, based on the columns, whatever the columns we have there, based on the default the data types, it is going to create a table structure. Now observe this one. See this table is successfully created. Now if you see the table structure, see this, let me check this. Select start from table, my table, it is created, right? Observe this. This is the one way how we can able to, without creating the table manually, we can able to use this infer schema option to create a table structure. See this one. Now the table structure is created. Did you mention any like data types here? No, right? We didn't mention any data types also. My table structure, if you observe, see this one, by default, based on the data what it contains in that particular file, based on that it created a table structure. How come it will understand the columns? Because of the file format, we have used parse header equal to true. And then how it will create, like how it will know what is the the data type it has to pick. Based on this file name we are going to give, right? Based on this, it is going to understand what is the type of the particular the data. Based on that, it will create a table structure. Now the table structure is created. Now what we can do, the table structure is there, stage available, file available in the stage. Now we can able to run the copy command. Now let's observe this one. We are going to execute the copy command. When you are implementing this copy command, see this one, you can use copy into table from stage name. This is the stage name. This is the stage name. And then what is the table? What is the file which you wanted to load? This is the file which you wanted to load. Only one file it is available in the stage. So if you wanted to give, you can give it. Otherwise, you can like leave it. If you have one file, no need to give it. If you have multiple files, then you can specify like this slash and then file name. Then file format, this is the file format which you required, and then match by columns, case sensitive. This is required when you are doing this. Now what it is going to do is based on the columns in the file, it is going to load the data to this particular table. Now let's observe this one. It will load the data into the, now it is loaded. What is the difference we observed here? Only the difference is when you are creating a file format, we are going to give parse header equal to true, because it has to pick the header. File format has to pick the headers also. Along with that, when it is coming to the creating table structure, we are going to give the object construct method based on the infer schema option. This is the infer schema option. You are going to give the location of the path, I mean stage area, and then you are going to give the file name. Then we will give the file format. This is the option how we can able to create a table structure by using infer schema option. Maybe you will get a question in interview, how can able to create a table based on the file in your stage area. I don't wanted to create a table manually. I wanted to create a table based on the file in the stage area. Let's say for example, I have like 50 columns or 100 columns in a file. Based on that, I wanted to create a table structure. I don't want to do it manually. Then we can use this infer schema option. This is one of the like option that Snowflake has introduced. So we can use this. Okay. Now let's come to this, the actual topic into the Snowflake. Let's come to that here, whatever the tables we have created. See this, show tables. See this one. If I use show tables or if I use show databases, whatever it may be, you can able to see all these are the permanent tables. whatever we have done till today, whatever the tables we created, the database which you created, schema which it is available, schema which you are going to create, by default, if you don't specify anything, by default your table kind is permanent. You can see this here as a kind per table, right? That is nothing but it is a permanent. If you see, for example, show databases, when it is coming to the show databases also, now observe this here, show databases, this is the database which you have created, right? The database you can see option, you cannot able to see any option, it is nothing but a permanent. The schema also, if you observe, show schema, see this, whatever the schema it is available, if you observe the public schema which you created, see this, in the options it is empty, that is nothing but a permanent. So here whatever you are going to create, by default it will be a permanent. There is a three keywords here. One is, let me come to this one. One is permanent, another one is transient, another one is temporary. These are the three keywords mainly. When we create any database, any schema, any table, by default it will be permanent. This is default. By default it will be a permanent table, permanent database, permanent schema when you have created it. And at the same time, this permanent, right, it will have retention period. We will come to this, what it mean by that. Retention period, it will have 1 to 90 days, up to 1 to 90 days. Maximum will be 90 days. Minimum will be, like by default, it will be 1 day. Minimum you can mention 0. Minimum you can mention 0. This is retention period. The permanent will have, along with fail safe also it will be available. This is applicable for, permanent is applicable for databases and schemas and tables. This permanent keyword is going to applicable for database, schema and table. Same thing when it is coming to the temporary, right? Sorry, transient. This is also applicable for the database, schema, table. But here the difference is, this is not a default one. You need to create it as a transient. Here the retention period is only maximum 1 day, not more than that. And coming to the fail safe, no fail safe. That is the difference. We will come to that, what it mean by that retention period, what it mean by the fail safe, we will discuss about it. Same way when it is coming to the transient, right? Sorry, temporary keyword. Temporary is applicable only for the table, guys. It is not applicable for the database. It is not applicable for the schemas. Only this is applicable for tables only. Here also retention period 1 day. Here also there is no fail safe. But I can create same thing as a transient, same thing as a temporary. But what is the difference? Here also 1 day, here also no fail safe. Here also 1 day retention period, here also no fail safe. When I create a table here, when I create a table here, then what is the difference? The difference is, when you create a temporary table, right? This temporary table valid only for session. After completion of the session, these tables is going to drop. It won't be available in your database. That is a property of the temporary tables. It is only applicable for a temporary tables only. Now let's come to this one. What exactly this retention period is going to do? This retention period means, let's assume that based on this, time travel is going to work. For example, I wanted to see 1 week before what exactly available in my table. then retention period is going to work. Fail safe means after the retention period you will have a fail safe. Additional 7 days it will be available. Addition 7 days. If you want something from the fail safe, you need to request a Snowflake support team. Let me give you an example, then we can understand. Let's assume you have a bank account. In your bank account, you wanted to see your transactions, last week transactions or last month transactions. What you can do? You can download your bank statement and you can able to see your transactions, right? What you are doing here, your current balance is different, but you are checking last month what happened exactly in my account, right? Or you are checking last week what happened exactly in your account. That is your retention period. Based on the time travel, we can achieve this. Setting up how many days we can able to go back and then check at that time what is available. That particular period we will call it as retention period. One more example I will give. Let's say for example in your mobile you have limited, when you are taking a pics, let's assume that you have a limited capacity. For example, only 3 months or only 20 days of your date pics it will keep in your mobile. Older than that one it will be erased. If you wanted to go back and then you can check, you can see your selfies on every day. Let's assume every day you are taking your selfies. You wanted to see 1 week before how you are looking. What you will do, you will go back your 1 week before selfie what you have taken, what you have taken that pic at that time, you can check it, right? So you have a capability of going back and then checking at that particular period of time, right? The same way, whenever you created a table, the complete data will be available in the table. This table data permanently it is available. Whatever the data it is available in the table, permanently it is available. But every day I am doing some transaction on this table. I wanted to check that, for example, if you see, if I use select star from, try to understand this, very important. Select star from table, if I use this, what I can see it now. I can see this is your final data. This is the final data what I can able to see it now here. This is my final data which it is available, right? This is my final data. Now, maybe on everyday basis, I may, this table is created 1 week before. Let's assume, see this, when the table is created, this table is created, let's assume. So this is 1 week before the table is created. Every day I am doing some inserts, some updates, some operations on this table. Now I wanted to see 2 days before what is available in this table. Setting up that period, right? How many days you can able to go back and then you can check snapshot information at that particular period of time. It means nothing but a at that moment of time snapshot. For example, 1 week before what is your balance at that particular period of time. Maybe today you have a balance of like $1,000, but you wanted to see 2 days before what is your balance in your account. How you will check that? If you have a bank statement, then you can able to go back and then check, right? Otherwise it is not possible. Always you can see your current balance now, right? That capability, going back and then checking snapshot information, that particular period we are going to define, right? That we will call it as a retention period. Now let's come to another one called fail safe. This fail safe, by default it is 7 days, it will be applicable for every database, every table or every schema. Here this failsafe is only applicable for permanent table, permanent database, permanent schemas. After completion of the retention period, whatever you have given, then by default, Snowflake in the backend, it is going to maintain 7 more additional days. If you need anything from that, then you have to raise a request to the Snowflake support team. Then they will support you to get back the data. I mean, to see the data at that particular period. For example, the bank example we discussed, right? Let's say in your online account, you have a capability to download only 3 months of your bank statement. That's it, not more than that. You want to see beyond that. You want like more than 3 months bank statement. For example, you wanted to like see like 4 months bank statement, 5 months bank statement. Then what you can do, in online you don't have option. You have to go to the bank and then you have to request your manager, so I need this. Then they will give the details to you, right? That is nothing but fail safe option. That is not in your hand. That is not within your online account. You cannot able to do that. You have to go to the bank and you have to get from them, right? The same way, fail safe is going to maintained by the Snowflake support team. Let's assume any disaster happened. So anything, for example, this particular database is corrupted or particular thing is corrupted, account is corrupted, then you no need to worry. You will have by default 7 days it will be applicable with the Snowflake support team. You can raise a request, but whatever you raise a request, whatever the Snowflake is going to give it to us, Snowflake is going to charge for the disaster recovery. Get it? So now let's come to this. When you are creating this permanent database, right, there is a inheritance. The levels, like higher level is permanent, lower level is transient, transient to lower level is temporary, higher level is permanent, next level is transient, next level is temporary. Now it means within a permanent database I can create a transient database, transient schemas, transient tables. I can create temporary tables within the permanent database. Within a transient database, I can create transient schemas, transient tables, not the permanent table, permanent schema. When I create a permanent table, if I create any database, any schema here, by default, it will be a permanent only because it will inherit from the higher level. Now, for example, here, if you observe, what is my database? Class database. This database is my permanent database. If I create any schema here, by default, it will be a permanent. You can create a transient schema also here within the permanent. That is possible. Now, let's observe this. This is a database, right? Class database. This is a permanent database. Now, I wanted to create a schema here. If I create a schema, for example, create schema, my underscore schema I created. So this just says command create schema, schema name. Now I am not mentioning any keyword here, whether it is a permanent, whether it is a transient. If I create it, it will inherit it from the higher level. What is the higher level? Database. Database, which database it is? Permanent database. So permanent schema will be created now. See this one? Permanent schema is going to create. Now the new schema is created here. See this? One more schema create. This is a permanent schema. Suppose I want to create a transient schema here. Then observe this one. Create, create. Here we need to give transient schema, and then schema name we have to give t underscore. I will give trans underscore. We can able to recognize. See this one? I'm creating a transient schema. Now what happened? Transient schema is created here. Now observe the difference here. If I go to the show schemas, observe. Now you can understand. These two schemas we created now. These two schemas we created. Now observe. See this? By default, what you created, my schema, that is a permanent schema. Now, which I mentioned the keyword called transient, it became as a transient schema. If you don't specify anything, by default it will inherit from higher level. Now this is my permanent schema, right? Now when you create a schema, by default it will be connected to that particular schema. Now it is connected to transient schema. Let me connect to other schema. Let me refresh it here. Okay, otherwise from here we can connect set as worksheet. Now it is connected to my schema, that is permanent schema. Now if I create a table here, the table will be by default it will be permanent, because where you are trying to create a table, we are trying to create a table under permanent schema. This is a permanent schema, right? Now observe this one. Let me give simple syntax here. Create table. Table name I will give my table. I will give just ID and then number is the column. Just I'm creating a simple table. Now, are we mentioning any keyword here? Create table syntax? No, right? See this? From where we are creating? From my schema we are creating. What type of schema it is? Permanent schema. Now observe this one. The table also it will be permanent. You no need to specify anything. Now see this one. The table is created. This table is a permanent table. Now I want to create a transient table here. Possible. Transient is the lower level than the permanent, right? So schema is permanent. You can create a transient table. If I want to create transient table, what I need to do is observe this one. Here I will give create, just I will give transient table. I will give the trans table name. See this one? I am giving a keyword here. Now I am giving keyword called transient. Now it is created. See this? The one more table also created. Now if you see show tables here, show tables, come here, where we are under permanent schema, you can able to see the two tables. One is permanent table, another one is a transient table. See this one? Table, permanent table, transient table, right? Both are created. Now let's come to this. Now permanent transient created under the permanent schema. What about the temporary? Yes, temporary also you can able to create it here, because this is a temporary is a lower level than the permanent, right? Here we need to give keyword called temporary. Now just I will give temp. Observe this one. In which scenarios we are going to create this temporary table, we will discuss it. Now the temporary also it is created. See this, one more table is created, right? Temp table is created. Now observe show tables, where we are doing all these things under the permanent schema, right? See this one, this is a temp table, this is a transient table, this is a permanent table. See this one, transient, temporary, permanent, all three types of tables it is available. Where it is available? Under permanent schema. This schema where it is available? Under the permanent database. Now within this permanent database, we created another schema called a transient schema. We given the name as a transient for this. Now let me connect it to the transient schema. Observe this carefully now. Now this worksheet connected to transient schema. Now if I create a table here, by default which table it will be created? Permanent table. But from where it will inherit? From higher level. What is the higher level of this? Here now we are working with my schema, my schema, that is a transient. So you no need to specify here. By default table will be created as a transient only. See this one? We created a table where we created under transient schema. I created a table. See this one? Table is created in this particular schema. Now if I see, by default the table which it is created, show tables. Observe this one. See this. What is this? Transient. Did you mention a keyword here like transient? No, right? I didn't mention, but how it is created? Because it inherited from higher level. You no need to give transient. One more thing, remember. In the transient schema, transient databases, it is not possible to create a permanent table, permanent database, permanent schemas. Permanent is not possible under transient because permanent is the higher level. Now, see this. If I don't mention anything, by default, normally what it will create, it will be a permanent. But here what it's created? Transient. Now we are under transient. Can I able to create a temporary? Yes, possible. Temporary is the lower level, right? See this one. Temporary, I can able to create it. Now one more is created. See this temporary is created. Now if I observe show tables, within this you can able to see this is the one table and then this is the another table. See this one, transient schema. One is a transient table, another one is a temporary table, right? If you don't mention anything, by default it will inherit from higher level. If you mention anything specifically, then it will be connected, it will be created as a whether it is a temporary or transient. Now this is a schemas, right? This is a transient schema, this is a permanent schema. This is permanent database. Within the permanent database, we created transient schema, we created permanent schema, we created transient table, permanent table, temporary table. Now if I create a transient database, what will happen? If I create transient, see this one, create transient database, and I will give trans underscore class. Now I am creating a new database called transient database. See this one. If I don't mention this keyword, by default it will be created as a permanent database only. Now observe this. I am creating permanent transient database. Now the database is created. See this one, new database created. What about this database? If you observe here, the database type, see this one. This is the database which we created. What it is telling? Option transient, right? Transient. It is a transient database. Within this now worksheet connected to transient database. Observe this. Now if I create a schema here, by default what is schema? It will be transient only. Temporary only applicable for table. You cannot create temporary schema, not possible. Only applicable for table only, temporary keyword. Now that within this database, can I able to create a permanent schema? Not possible. Create, see this one, schema, and then I will give new schema. For example, new schema. I'm trying to create a new schema. What will happen now? Generally, if you don't specify anything, which type of schema it will be created? Permanent. But where we are under? We are under the transient database. Then what it will do? It will inherit from higher level. Observe this. See this one? We created it. We didn't specify anything. But if you see the show schemas, observe this. Show schemas. Observe. New schema which you created. What happened? Transient, right? Transient. Did you specify anything here? No. Why it is created as a transient? Because we are under transient database. Now if I create any table here under this schema, what will happen? By default it will be a transient table only. See this? I will create a table here. Which schema we are creating? Transient schema. Under transient database, the table will be transient. But we didn't mention anything here. See this? We didn't mention any keyword. But if you see the table the same way how the previously it is created, it will be a transient. If I want a permanent table in the transient database, not possible. Permanent is a higher level. Now we can create temporary also within this schema. We can create. Now observe the show tables. let me show you what is the purpose of permanent now. So what is the difference here? See this, these are the two tables created. One is transient, one is temporary, right? Now let's say, let me pick some data here to show you some option here for the temporary. Let me, okay, I will create the table temporary and then I will insert this data. Let me show you the behavior of the temporary, how it is going to work. Now where we are now, we are under transient schema, transient database. I can create a temporary table here, right? Now I am creating a temporary table with this particular name, temporary keyword I have given, and then I am inserting data also into this table. We have inserted the data also in this particular table. Now observe this using select star from, what is the table name? This is the table name. Now let's execute this. We can see the data here. We can see the data. The table is created. This is the table, 8 rows. We can see the data, right? Now observe this. Select this one. I am coming to new worksheet. Here you can see plus symbol, right? I clicked on the new worksheet. The new worksheet open and I will connect it to same database, and then which schema it is created under new schema. I will connect it to the same new schema. Now let me execute the query. Observe this. I am executing the same query in other worksheet. When I execute this, observe what will happen. See this, what it is telling. It's telling that compilation error. See this, table does not exist or not authorized. It is telling that it is not authorized. Why? What is the reason behind this? See this, database, schema, table. Can you able to see the template table which you created here in this worksheet? No, right? Now let's come to the main worksheet. Now observe this one, new schema, the table. Still the table is available, right? Temporary table is available. But other temporary table which you have, these two temporary tables, you cannot able to see that in the other worksheet because this session ID is different. Here, when you create a temporary table with your user details, other users cannot able to see the temporary table. And one more thing, once you log out and then log in the session, this temporary table by default it is going to drop out. It will not be available for you. Temporary table only for a session purpose. Then why we need to create this if it is getting dropped? If it is not visible by, for example, if I create a table in our project, it has to be visible to all of us, right? If it is not visible to all of us, then what is the purpose of it, right? Let's take this scenario. What will happen is normally, let's assume we have a table. Now my manager said that I wanted to work on this table. I wanted to do some validation. I wanted to do some testing on this particular table. What I will do in the database perspective, as per the best practices, I will create backup table. Other person also working, they also will create backup one table. Now, when you create a backup tables, what will happen? This is occupying 1 GB data. This also it will occupy 1 GB data. This also will occupy 1 GB data. Let's assume this is the original table. One developer is created this backup and then they are doing some validation. Another developer has taken this backup and then he is doing other validation. Okay, let's assume this. In this case, when you are doing this, right, what will happen is, so in this particular situation, let's say uh, once the backup is done, you have done the some changes. After that, you send a mail to your lead or manager. Yes, this has been done. This has been validated. All looks good. All looks good, right? So in this case, what will happen is after completion of your validation, you used to forget to drop this table. But in Snowflake, in other databases, that is fine. But in Snowflake, what will happen? If you have additional storage, it will be chargeable, right? It is chargeable, right? Unnecessary when you are creating backup tables, this is also chargeable, this is also chargeable. Instead of only 1 GB data, we are paying unnecessarily for additional 2 GB data also when you take a backup, especially when you are doing some testing kind of activities. When you are taking a backup of these kind of things, we used to forget to delete these tables, right? If you know that, okay, this is just for a particular session purpose, particular activity only, this is only for myself, I am doing some testing, just this is only for myself, I don't want to keep this in a database permanently, then you can create a temporary table. Once your work is done, if you like forget to drop this table also, automatically when you log out and then log in, this table is going to drop out automatically. Now let's observe this one. Here, if I log out, see this one, if I log out, now the table is still available right here in the main worksheet, not in the other worksheet. Before that, let me show you why it is not, why we are telling that it is only for a session, why it is not available for this particular worksheet. If I go to query ID, here you can able to see session IDs. Whenever you are running a query, whenever you open any worksheet, every worksheet will have a session IDs here. Every worksheet will have session IDs. Now let me show you. Let's click on the column and then session ID. Observe this one. Now from where it is, see this one, session IDs. From today when you logged in, all the session IDs are similar. There is no difference, right? But the yesterday session ID will be different. See this, yesterday session ID is different. Now today when I changed worksheet, see this one, that worksheet session ID is different. See this one, 2150, right? 2150. This particular worksheet, whatever execution we have done, that table, it is telling that that is not available. See this one, compilation error because of the session ID. The table is available in this particular session. See this one, this session query is executed and then you can see the result. This session ID is last, if you observe, 342. But this particular session, if you observe, this is failed. This session ID is different, right? That's the reason we used to tell that temporary tables is only for a session ID. Now, if I log out and then log in here, see this one, I will try to log out and then log in. If I log out and then log in, altogether new session will come into the picture. Now let me log in. See this. Now what will happen here now? Let me open the worksheet. The same worksheet I've opened. And then when I try to execute the same query here, all the temporary tables, whatever we have created, all the schemas, all the databases, see this, not available. In the same main worksheet, see this, in the transient database, new schema, can I able to see the temporary? Gone. Class database, my schema, can I able to see the temporary tables? No. We can see only permanent transient. It is gone, right? All the temporary will be dropped out after the completion of the session. Only your permanent table it will be available, transient tables it will be available. But it will inherit from the higher level. If you don't specify anything, any type, if you don't specify, it will inherit from higher level. If you specify something, then it will be taken off that particular transient or temporary. But under the transient database, remember this, under the transient database, you cannot create permanent tables. That is not possible. And one more thing, this is one of the question here. Say this, they will give syntax like this, and then they will ask which table type it will be created. This is one of the certification question. And permanent keyword they will give like this, which table type. By seeing like this, like permanent table will give table name, id, number. Okay, so which table type it will be created? Observe this one, see this. So by seeing the syntax we can tell that okay, this is going to be created a permanent table. But remember, there is no keyword called permanent in your Snowflake. Permanent keyword itself, it is not available by default. When you create anything, that will be a permanent only. If you don't specify whether it is a schema, whether it is a transient or temporary, by default it will be created permanent based on where you are trying to create it, which database it is. By default, if you are creating under that permanent database, permanent schema will be created, permanent table will be created. If you are creating under transient database, transient schema will be created, transient database, transient table will be created, right? By default it will inherit from the higher level. If you specify temporary specifically, then only temporary table will be created. So within the permanent database you wanted to create transient, that is possible. Then you need to specify specifically this is a transient schema, transient table. Now all these things, right, applicable for the database and schemas. Now when you see what is the main difference here, when it is coming to this, the main difference is what you are trying to understand here. This is the retention period and fail safe. This how to work with this retention period. Now if you observe, whatever the table, whatever the databases we created, everything, whatever we have done here, everything retention period by default it is 1. By default retention period will be 1. Let me connect it to class database. Now show tables, all the tables, whatever the tables we created here, see this, what is the retention period? 1. By default retention period is 1. Minimum retention period is 0. Maximum retention period for permanent table is 90. For the transient it is only 1. Now how to change this retention period? If you observe for the database also, by default retention period is 1 only. By default it will be 1. See this, the shared databases that will be 0. We can, this is the minimal will be 0. And if you see the schemas also, by default retention period will be 1 only. How we can able to change this retention period? Based on the retention period only, this time travel is going to work. How to work with the time travel? What is the relation between this retention period and time travel? We will see that thing practically in the coming session. So I will show you with the data, then you can understand clearly what is this retention period and then what exactly the time travel is. Then we can understand clearly how we can able to go back, how the time travel is going to work here. So what is the scenario here? So based on that, what one more thing, remember, the tables, databases, schemas, whatever we are going to create in Snowflake, it will be permanently available until you drop. Other than the temporary table, temporary table is going to drop by default. Remaining everything it will be available permanently. Retention period means it's a capability of going back and then picking the information at that particular snapshot, at that particular time, Picking the snapshot information of the historical data capability, we will call it as retention period. Clear? Don't get confused here. We will see this practically in the coming session. I will show you with the sample data. Then everyone can able to understand clearly how these things is going to work. Now let's come to the questions here. You can see some of the questions here. Could you please share the drive link for the class notes and material? Yeah, Kalyani, just 1 second. I will give the drive link here. If anyone is not having access, so please inform to the organizer. They will give the access to you guys. This is the drive link which I have shared. Okay. Okay. Coming to this. Remember one thing, in mostly in development environment, testing environment, we will use transient tables. Where we don't require the retention period, there we will use transient tables. Production environment, we will use temporary tables. Temporary. Okay, we will see that with example in the coming session. Then you will understand clearly, Naga. Could you please give a difference between CT and temp table also? Temporary table is it is going to drop out, but when it is coming to CTE, it is completely different. Don't compare with the CTE here, Naga. CTE is it's a common table expression. During the execution time, it will store temporary data, but it is not as a temporary table. Temporary table, it will be available physically, but once you session is completed, it is going to drop automatically. Okay, so during the session you can able to access it, but when it is coming to the CTE during the query execution time, it will be valid. That value will be available. You can use it as a temporary. If you need retention more than 90 days, okay. Not possible, Kalyani. So we cannot go beyond 90 days. 90 more than 90 days retention period, if you maintain, what will happen is when it is coming to the partition session, you can able to understand versionings will become more. When it is versionings become more in the back end, then your storage will become more. So that's the reason you cannot go beyond 90 days. 90 days, more than 90 days, it's no one is required. See, they have given 90 days of the retention period, but in the projects, right, no one will use more than like 45 days, because if you use more than 45 days or more than 30 days, whatever it may be, how many number of days you are mentioning, the storage cost will be increased. That's why we won't give it. No, so don't 7 years or 10 years or 20 years, the data will be available, database will be available permanently. But retention means it's a capability of going back and checking at that particular period of time. That's it. Okay. So don't compare with the storage. Storage will be permanently available. But if you wanted to go back and then check 2 days before what exactly it is available, then your retention period will come. It's like kind of snapshot. That's the reason I given the bank example. You have a bank account, you can see your current balance now, but you wanted to see 2 days before balance, where you will check in your account. If you open and then if you see, you can see always current balance. But if you wanted to go and then check 2 days before what happened, you will go to the bank statement, right? That particular capability, we used to call this as a retention period. Now the data is available in the table EM select star from table. If you see any table, you can see the data. This data is loaded. Let's assume the data has been loaded from last like 7 days. Every day we are loading a data into the table. But when it is coming to the data, this is permanently it is available. But what I want is 2 days before I don't have 16 rows. 2 days before I have only 12. I wanted to go back to 2 days before. I wanted to see 12 2 days before those 12 records, which records it belongs to. That is a capability. That is, we will call it as retention period capability. Okay. I will show you with example, then you will be very clear on this.
So the retention is similar to DB restore, is it, sir?
We cannot
Like
say
rest
that restore, Ankit. Restoring means completely it is restoring, right? So
yeah.
one way we can say that, so we will have a other copy. We can have a other copy. We can say that like that. If you want
Okay.
restore
Okay.
also, we can do that, but both will be available. Yeah.
Okay.
Creating transient temporary object appears in UI. Ankit, I didn't understand that.
So when we create a table, right? I mean, there is an option usually of create in the UI.
Oh,
Create
okay.
table or create database.
Got
Yes.
it. You mean to say that, yeah, right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Here you are talking about.
Database. Yes. So only yeah, right side we have create option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see this one. When you are creating a table, so which table type you wanted? You want by default it will be a standard. Okay. So by default it will be standard table. You can create it here. So if you want any specific table, you have to modify this. You don't have
Okay.
transient and temporary. Only standard table you can create by using UI. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions here? If you have incremental data everyday loading into the table, Kalyani, don't get confused here. See, when you have a incremental data, every day we can able to load the data and then complete data it will be available. For example, if you are loading the data from last 2 years, all the 2 years data also it will be available in the table. But so you wanted to see, for example, so 5 days before, what exactly is available? We can go 5 days before. Like that, you can go up to 90 days before and then you can able to see that. So till 90 days only, you can go back and then you can check. Before that, you can see the data completely in the table that is available, but you want exact snapshot. For example, I will give the best example, Kalyani. Let's say you are taking your selfies on everyday basis. You are keeping like a selfies in your mobile only for 3 months. Remaining all the selfies you are keeping in your Google Drive. Let's assume that older than this, like a 2 5 days 1 week, the selfies you are keeping in Google Drive, only 5 days selfies you are having in your mobile. You have a retention of only 5 days only in your mobile. What you can see is up to 5 days before only you can see 5 days before how you are looking, 4 days before how you are looking at that particular time, right? That is capability is retention period. That capability we can decide up to 90 days only we can do that. The permanently the data it will be available permanently in a table itself. Still any confusion, Kalyani? I will show you with example tomorrow, then you will understand clearly.
I'm good. Thank you.
Exactly, checking back the table at that particular period of time, or checking back the schema at that specific time. Any other questions? Okay, guys. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Thank you all for your time. Bye.